Welcome once more to Reese Rambles, my weekly wrap-up of all the interesting stuff that I've spotted in the worlds of retro gaming and retro computing from the past week. This is Reese Rambles episode number 68. So yeah, I wonder what I'm going to do next week. But anyway, yes, I hope you're all well and welcome to another weekend. I can't promise that I'll cover absolutely everything that's happened in the past week, but I'll certainly cover the stuff that I've spotted that I find interesting, that I've got time to cover. Yeah, lots of caveats there, but let's go straight into the first story of the week, and this is to do with the Atari 2600, or VCS, as it would have been known back in the day, the video computer system, one of my favourite consoles, and one, of course, that I have covered extensively on my YouTube channel, both on Control Alt Reese and indeed on this channel as well. And this is something that doesn't come along every day, certainly in this day and age. I know, I've been into Atari stuff for a very, very long time now, shall we say, and there once was a time when all sorts of interesting prototypes and things were being dug up left, right and centre, and there seemed to be a new one every week. But to have one in 2024 now is quite special, and it's a very well-known game, a very well-known franchise, and pretty much complete from what I can see. I haven't actually had a chance to check this out personally, and I might even do a second channel video just where I sort of have a bit of a closer look and get hands-on with this game. But this is Tarzan. Anyway, I won't keep you waiting any longer, audio listeners. And it's a game for the Atari 2600. So this was originally released on the ColecoVision back in the day, of course, a competitor to the 2600, based on Tarzan, of course. And it was officially announced and everything. It was all developed. It was all ready to go. And then 1983 came along, and there were some shall we say, hotly debated events. I'm not going to sit here and blindly regurgitate the whole video game market crash thing to you, because then I'll inevitably get the standard off-the-shelf comments that people get when they talk about that on YouTube. But let's just say Atari wasn't in a very good place in 1983. They had a load of unsold stock. They had a load of debt and stuff, and a lot of things got cancelled, and this was one of those things. And it's quite a special game because it's a big one. It's a big game. So the Video Game History Foundation, which is where I'm getting this story from, really fantastic in-depth article here that's a really long and very good read. So I can highly recommend this. And of course, everything that I cover in this ramble will be linked down below, so you can check that out. But just to kind of very briefly summarise just the basics of it. Let's let the website tell the story itself. So it says, when you think about games written for the Atari Video Computer System, or 2600 today, what do you picture? Likely a home version of an arcade game, or some kind of shooter, a maze game, something that takes place entirely on a single screen. This is not the entirety of the 2600 library, though. Major releases such as Pitfall, Adventure, E.T., The Extraterrestrial, or Smurfs, Rescuing Gargamel's Castle, classic game that, were built around worlds that were extended beyond the screen's borders, where you didn't necessarily know what was coming next or how you'd need to approach that challenge. Of course, lots of arcade games, originally arcade games were single static screens. You know, we had stuff like Space Invaders and Pac-Man and stuff like that all took place on a single screen. Then we got stuff like Donkey Kong and stuff like that where ultimately the levels weren't connected, but there were at least a few sort of different ones that progressed as the game went along. But the games that this story mentions here, obviously Pitfall, I think, is probably the best known example. Basically like a proto-modern platformer game. You know, you run to the side of the screen and then the next screen comes along and you start again on the left-hand side and constantly keeps going. And Tarzan was one of these games. It would have been one of these sort of early examples of one of these platform-type games. So of course, originally released on the ColecoVision, so it's not like it was completely unknown. If you wanted to go and play it, you could go and play it on the ColecoVision. But it was announced at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show held in Las Vegas in 1983, with a 2600 port announced later that year during Summer CES for a November release. These dates slipped, with the ColecoVision Tarzan finally shipping in August, and the 2600 game announced as a second quarter release before being quietly cancelled. And it says, the released ColecoVision version was fairly well reviewed, with newsletter Computer Entertainer praising the graphics and the varied action, noting strategy is required to clear the game. But the 2600 version faded into obscurity. Anyway, I'm not going to sit here and read the entire article because, for a start, it's very long and very detailed, so we'll be here all day. But also, I don't want to do the Video Game History Foundation a disservice. You should go to their website and check out their stuff, because they do some great work in preserving all of these old games and things. But it tells the story of how what's the chap's name? I should have had some notes here, shouldn't I? I think it's Rob from Atari Spot, who is a very well-known collector in the world of Atari. Managed to get hold of one of these prototype boards, and it's a 16 kilobyte board which uses bank switching, and it actually uses a really weird and unique method. So basically the Atari 2600 was, or the VCS when it was first released, could only address 4 kilobyte cartridges, and it wasn't long before games broke through that limit and developers needed a way to actually load more than 4 kilobytes into the machine at any given time. Well, not at any given time, but you know what I mean, as needed. And so bank switching was kind of used to switch between different banks of memory on the RAM chips on the actual cartridges. And this is one of those, but a lot of the cartridges, or all of the kind of known cartridges out there, use one of a handful of different techniques to do this bank switching, and that's well supported by emulators and flash carts and that kind of thing. But this used a unique method which wasn't already known and wasn't supported, and it has actually been modified by a developer, Thomas Jentsch. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. An Atari homebrew programmer, and he has actually modified the code so it will work on emulators and on flash carts, which is wonderful. So of course we can all check out the game ourselves. Big part of what the Video Game History Foundation do is, of course, releasing this stuff in a playable form so people can actually experience it. So yeah, it goes into the whole story of how the game kind of came to be and how it was developed, and the story of why it was cancelled. Fascinating stuff. Like I say, I'm probably going to do a quick second channel video. I can't promise anything, but I would like to do a quick second channel video where I do check this out. But yeah, there is a video on here. Of course, if you don't have access to an emulator or a Mister or a flash cart or something to check it out on your own hardware, there is a video here so you can actually see the gameplay in action. So the first level, by the looks of it, we've got this kind of, what was the game? Was it Jungle Run, Jungle Hunt, something like that, where you're kind of swinging from vine to vine. Of course, iconic Tarzan action, so that's got to be in there. But yeah, I think the graphics are kind of very reminiscent of Pitfall. I think is probably a fair comparison. There's Tarzan just punching a guy and knocking him out, and now there's a crocodile, and he's got to jump up and he's got to swing across this river, get past the crocodile by the looks of it. Oh, he can swim as well and get eaten by the crocodile, inevitably. But yeah, there's it looks like there's quite a few different screens, and interestingly enough, for a game of this era, quite a few different kind of gameplay concepts. You know, we've got this platforming type thing where you're running and jumping and swinging and stuff. You've got swimming in there, and now there's this level where he's climbing up a wall, and you've got these boulders and things coming from the top. So in 1983, this would have been quite an impressive game. Quite good kind of depth to the gameplay and a lot of replayability and stuff. So great that it's, we've just come on to, what should I compare it to? Like a Donkey Kong type section where you've got different levels and platforms and stairs and things that you can go up. Not a great comparison. Keystone Capers? No. Well, whatever. Anyway, you can see it for yourself if you go and check out the article and the linked video. But yeah, looks really cool. Looks like this would have been a really awesome game back in the day. And it's quite sad that it was a victim of that era when everything didn't quite go to plan. So we've got the game itself, we've got original notebook scans and things, development notes, things like that, how it was all marketed. Very, very comprehensive article. I can highly recommend it, and I can't wait to check this out myself. So some slightly older news for my next story, but hey, it's retro, that's the theme of the day, so we're going to stick with it. And this has come up on loads of people's radars this week. I've seen it reported in quite a few different places, and it has been posted to my Discord server as well, so thank you for posting that, person whose name I didn't take a note of, but we shall continue. I'm not quite sure what it is that's kind of made this come up on people's radar again, but I'm very, very glad that it did, because this is right in my ballpark. This is something that I've enjoyed very much, and I am glad to share it with you too. But first we'll do a bit of an overview of how this thing came to be and the whole context of what it is. It relates to Quake, and we all love Quake, don't we? So yes, this is JS13K Games, which is an annual competition for web game developers. It's been running since 2012, and yeah, that's 12 years now, believe it or not. The fun part of the compo is the file size limit set to 13 kilobytes, according to the website. This year's competition will start at 1 o'clock CEST on the 13th of August and end on the 13th of September 2024. And they've got loads of, obviously you can go through and see all the previous entries and stuff, and they've got loads of documentation, GitHub repos and code examples, resources, and all that cool stuff. Very supportive. One of these great kind of game jam things. There's always good communities to kind of be a part of if you want to flex some of those coding muscles. Not that I've ever participated in one of these. That's not true, actually. I have done Hacktoberfest. I think it's DigitalOcean. They do Hacktoberfest every year, where you get like T-shirts and stickers and things for contributing to open source projects. I have actually participated in that a few years, and I do have the stickers to prove it. I don't think they're on this laptop. I think they're on my old laptop, but there you go. So yeah, the rules are that the package size needs to be below 13 kilobytes, and yeah, 13 kilobytes is nothing really, is it? You can have readable and compressed source, no external libraries. There's a theme every year, which of course is announced when the competition's actually opened in August. And yada yada yada. Of course, all the entries have to be new, have to be original, has to be be supported by the major web browsers and all of that stuff. And this is an entry from 2021, and it's called Q1K3, and it's essentially Quake. It's the original Quake recreated in HTML and JavaScript in under 13 kilobytes, which is just mental, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy. And of course, you can play all of these games in your browser as well. So I will leave that as an exercise for you if you want to go and check it out. But this one is great. I mean, it's got you've got full like WASD movement and mouse look stuff. It's got 2 levels. It's got 5 types of enemies, 3 weapons, 30 different textures. It's got music. It's got dynamic lighting. It's got working doors. It's got collision detection, and it's got enemy AI with line of sight checks. No pathfinding. It is only 13 kilobytes for the entire game. And spatial audio, it says here, stereo separation and fall off by distance. And it's impressive. It's really impressive, this. So, well worth checking out. Like I say, it's a slightly older thing, but it was something that was sent to me this week, and I actually really enjoyed it. And I was quite impressed by the whole technical achievement of the whole thing. And I just love my boomer shooters, I'm never going to apologise for that. So if that sounds like something you want to go and check out, of course, the links will be in the usual places, just like they always are. So I know I've mentioned this multiple times before on these rambles, and of course I have covered this project on my channel as well, but I'm going to give it another shout out because I love it, and that's the FPGBC, which is an FPGA-based Game Boy, which I built a couple of months back, and yeah, bought it with my own money, love the thing. Think it's great, and the reason I'm bringing this up yet again is because there's another Game Boy related story in the news, and another similar offering to this, you might say, and it did catch my eye, and I thought it looked quite interesting, so I'm going to report on it. There's been so much interest in the Game Boy in particular. I think I'm seeing more and more of it pop up, particularly from people that weren't around when the Game Boy was a thing, like Gen Z and all of these new kind of new generation of people getting into gaming, maybe fed up with mobile games and all that kind of predatory rubbish, rediscovering Nintendo and those kind of handheld gaming roots, and quite rightly so. I mean, the Game Boy is an amazing system, one of my favourite systems of all time, and instantly takes me back to my childhood. I had a Game Boy and I loved it to bits. But I've covered all of that before, so we'll just get into this new Game Boy-related offering. And this came up on Twitter this week. Loads of people that I follow have been retweeting this, and it's from Mod Retro, and it's called the Chromatic. And there is a trailer on here as well. There's a 3-minute long trailer, and it says a handheld game console designed with modern tech but with retro soul, compatible with all classic Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges. And again, this thing is based on an FPGA chip, just like my FPGBC here. And it should work with like flash cartridges and all that stuff as well. There's no reason that it wouldn't. Also in this video, Casey Neistat pops up in this, and he's one of my favourite YouTubers. So yeah, not that that's related to, not that that's relevant at all. And yeah, so there's a graphic here that just kind of shows off some of the standout features of this thing. So it's got a 160 by 144 pixel sunlight readable backlit display. So unlike these with their IPS displays and stuff, this is actually the same native resolution as the original Game Boy, and was actually specifically designed for this project. Of course, the screen's a bit bigger than the original Game Boy, and it's colour. But yeah, there we go. And if you actually go digging into the details and stuff, there's they've done stuff to do with colour temperature and trying to match the original Game Boy colour perfectly. And they've really nerded out on the development of this thing. It's a magnesium alloy shell, which is quite cool. Obviously, most of these are plastic. I like the plasticiness of the Game Boy. I must say, it's a bit rugged and a bit, you're never too precious with a Game Boy, are you? You can chuck it around, you can chuck it in a bag or whatever, and you know it's going to survive because it's plastic. It kind of takes any knocks that you can throw at it. It takes the rough with the smooth, whatever. And it has that kind of everyman accessibility about it. But this thing has a magnesium alloy shell, which is very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how this thing feels to hold. But certainly indestructible. It's got PBT buttons. No idea what that means. It's got sapphire front glass. And it's got interestingly enough, it's got built-in USB video output. And they go into a bit more detail into this with this series of tweets and, of course, the linked website. Now, the person behind this project, interestingly enough, is a chap called Palmer Luckey, who you may have heard of. He was actually the guy that invented the Oculus Rift, and he was the founder of Oculus VR, I believe, before they were acquired by Facebook. And I have seen some debate about this guy, some people talking about politics and stuff. I'm not going to get into that. I've talked about politics on this ramble before, and it's not a nice subject. So whatever. But he is involved. He's the guy behind it. But interesting product. So if you go to modretro.com, you can see it's for sale here, £159 GBP. And they've got a few different colour options. They've got this amazing in-your-face lime green. They've got pink. That's quite a nice shade of pink. They've got yellow, and they've got like a nice turquoisey blue. Green, I think, back in the day I had a yellow Game Boy, and my sister had the green one. So I have quite fond memories of those two kind of colourways. But it comes bundled with a copy of Tetris, which I assume is officially licensed, and of course that is a colour version of Tetris. Compatible with Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges, scratch-resistant sapphire front crystal, blah de blah. I've already covered all of this stuff, but another Game Boy clone enters the fray, and it's interesting that all of these different companies are releasing these things, and they're quite obviously they're not calling their products the Game Boy, but they're quite happily throwing that around, and of course that's still trademarked to Nintendo, and Nintendo are quite famously litigious and do like to take down these projects and things that use their IP. So interesting to see all of these clones around, and Nintendo not really too bothered by them at the moment. I suppose they can't really argue that it's eating into their sales or whatever, but hey, maybe they could do an Atari, maybe they could do an official version and actually re-release some games for it in an official capacity as well. That would be quite cool, wouldn't it? That would be quite a cool thing to say. But there we go. Runs from 3 AA batteries for ultimate flexibility. Also compatible with custom lithium-ion pack. Anyway, all the specs are there. That will be linked. And that's another Game Boy project. So let's take a moment to talk about myself for a moment and the stuff what has been released on my channels that I have here. And I have released some stuff over the past week. Obviously, in the last ramble, I was just off the back of recording a video and talking about releasing that, and that, of course, did go out. That was the Atari ST OSSC Pro versus OSSC versus RetroTink video. And quite an interesting video. That there was a really terrible mistake in this the first time that I released it. So I made quite a big thing about talking about the Atari ST's high resolution mode and how difficult it is and how keen I was to test that and work out what the best device was for that. And then I missed the whole section where I actually showed it all working great with the OSSC Pro, which was very silly of me, a bit of a goof. And that was pointed out by the person that requested this video in the first place, Mr. Custardo. So thank you for that. And of course, I did take the video down, and I found that bit of footage that I'd accidentally deleted and slotted it back in, and nobody's any the wiser. But there you go. So if you're interested in the Atari ST and how that works with the RetroTink, the OSSC and the OSSC Pro, that is the video for you. But yeah, the Pro, the way that handles that high resolution, because it's a really weird like 70 hertz signal that's kind of unique to the ST. The way the Pro handles it is actually quite nice. It actually looks really good, and it's quite usable. It's not perfect, but it is quite usable, which I think is an improvement on any other scaler I've seen. So you can see all of that in action in that video, which is cool. And I've literally just uploaded this one and sent it out to my patrons. So this is to do with the original OSSC, or open source scan converter. And it's a mod that you can do, which allows you to install newer firmware. So if you have the OSSC 1.7 or below, which 99% of people will have because the 1.8 hasn't been on sale all that long, You can actually modify it. Just remove one component and add a small wire link, and that allows you to run the newer firmwares on them. And you get some of the features of the OSSC Pro. You get like the shadow masks and the 6x scaling and all of that stuff, as well as improvements to sync handling and image quality in general. So this was going to be a second channel video. This was actually going to go out on this channel. And by the time I'd finished it, I kind of thought, no, this needs to go out to a wider audience, because I haven't really come across any other sort of really good detailed guides on what this mod actually is and how to do it. The only way this has kind of been communicated has been through forum posts on the Video Game Perfection forums, and yeah, I just thought it would be good to document it and kind of get that information out there. So that is that. It's only a 6.5 minute video. Not even long enough for mid-roll ads. I'm missing a trick there, aren't I? But I just wanted to get that information out there. I even link directly to the mod how-to itself, which is only a couple of minutes, just for the people that don't want all the information around it, because that's the kind of helpful guy that I am. So they're the two videos that I released on my channels in the past week. I don't think it's really worth talking about figures and stuff like that. I mean, the Atari ST one, that's done 1,000 views in 5 days, which is pretty good for my second channel. I think it got about 1,000 views as well when I had to take it down because I messed it up. And those people don't come back and watch the re-uploaded video again. And they should. But anyway, there you go. And yeah, I suppose the only other sort of bit of personal news related to the channel is the thing on the shelf behind me. The Acorn Electron. I did a story last week and I talked about it was a recreated ULA chip for the Acorn Electron. And a really, really cool project by Mogwai, who is a friend of the channel. And it was covered by Lee, who has his own channel called More Fun Making It, who is a very good friend of mine. And I thought I'd give him a nice little shout out. Great project. It's going to be able to save loads of these cool old Acorn Electrons. The first computer I ever owned, so one that I have a lot of love for. And this wasn't a joke. I had a few comments about this, and people actually thought that it was supposed to be some kind of joke, because I spent like 10 minutes looking for my Acorn Electron, because I was going to sort of hold it up and say, look, Acorn Electron, you know, and kind of use it as a bit of a prop to illustrate that story. And I had absolutely no idea that it's literally above my head, and it's in every single video. So there you go. Silly me. I should have been looking at the camera feed in front of me rather than hunting around the studio. So there's that. Anyway, that's the updates on my stuff for the past week, and let's get back into the news stories. Over the past few weeks, I have been providing updates on Taki Udon and his project to clone the DE10 Nano board, which of course is the FPGA board that lives at the heart of the Mr. project, which we all know and love. And there has been another small update this week, so I thought I would cover that as well, just in the name of completeness, and because yet again, this is something that I'm quite excited about personally. And this is basically, the board has passed its final QA, so that's it. He did announce before that the board that he was showing off was basically final, but there was going to be one more kind of prototype production run just to QA everything and get it all signed off. This is that run. It has passed that QA, and that means it's ready to go into production, which is fantastic. So we've got some lovely pictures of the final board here. What a wonderful looking thing it is. And also pictures of it mated to, of course, a proper Mr. board and one of the RAM expansions, just to show that it is indeed all compatible, not that there was any doubt. But this is really cool. So this thing's going to be $99, which is less than half the price of the DE10 Nano. And it's going to allow us to Mr. all the things. I mean, I actually moved my arcade cabinet. I have an arcade cabinet that I built a few years ago. There is actually a really old video about it on my over on my main channel, and it had a PC inside it, and I ended up cannibalizing the PC and turning it into a NAS, as you do. So that's waiting for some new guts. You know, it's got a proper CRT monitor in there, and it's got all the arcade controls and everything else. Really cool looking thing, but it needs a new heart. And what I'm going to do is put a Mister in it, quite frankly, because I want that kind of lovely, perfectly accurate level of emulation. There we go. Yeah, you know, I like the Mr. Menu system and stuff. I just love the kind of the simplicity of it and everything, and I think it would suit my arcade cab very well. So that's what I'm going to do. And I don't want to spend over $200 or whatever it is in pounds for a proper DE10. So this thing can't come soon enough. He's also clarified a few things, some of the improvements that he's made, has made a few very minor design changes to this, which hopefully won't break compatibility with most of the stuff that's out there. Stuff like changing a USB micro port or a USB mini port for USB-C, stuff like that. But he has mentioned that you can see the power header pins in the top left corner. This will allow non-jank connectivity with add-on boards. So yes, I'm not sure if this allows you to power the board itself. I think it does. I think it just goes straight into like the bus of the board. So you could probably power the actual D10 itself just by hardwiring it into these, and of course also use them to power other devices and other boards, other add-ons, which is a nice little improvement. And he also mentions these kind of 4 pins here next to the USB port, which are new. And it says the 4 pins near the USB-A port on the right will allow better connectivity to the USB hub board. So, yeah, the USB hub board, of course, uses a cable. You have to plug it into the D10, and then you have to plug the other end into the USB hub board. And I mean, it's not a terrible solution at all. It's perfectly fine. But to have these actual header pins on there, it's going to make this so much tidier if you have this board as an option. So that's really cool. And there are some questions and answers and things in the comments, in the replies. But I think the one that probably stood out the most to me is this one. When can I order it? And Taki just answers, maybe 6 weeks from today, but this batch is limited to 2,000 boards. Also talks a little bit more about some of the console stuff that he's been working on. So yeah, I guess that's the official word. This thing will actually be available 6 weeks from today. A limited batch of 2,000 boards. I mean, 2,000 is quite big for an initial production run. I mean, we have to bear in mind that this is kind of a very niche hobby. But so cool that these things are finally getting out there, and just wanted to provide an update on that. And so we arrive with perhaps predictable regularity to my video of the week segment, my favourite video that I've seen on YouTube in the past week, and one that's not a Mr. Beast video. Although I did enjoy his latest one, where he had those 2 guys that were trapped in the woods in the forest, and they won $10,000 for every day that they survived. It was quite interesting. A bit of a change of pace for him, a bit less shouting and stuff. But anyway, I can't recommend his videos here because I'll just get a load of comments from people that don't like him. And that's absolutely fair enough, because we all have different tastes, and mine are notoriously terrible. But I assure you this video isn't terrible. This is all about cannon fodder. And this is, the title of the video is Poppy Game Insult to Our War Dead, all in capital letters. This is from a channel called Ahoy. And I imagine a lot of you have probably seen this, but I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on this and also point it out for the few people who haven't seen it and give it my personal endorsement, because it is a great video. And the title, Poppy Game Insult to Our War Dead, is actually a reference to a Daily Star headline from back in the day. And this is a story that I've heard John Hare. I went to a talk by John Hare, one of the founders of Sensible Software. That was at Kickstart last year. Of course, Kickstart coming up at the end of this month, and I'm going to be there. And I think I've heard Stu Cambridge tell this story as well in one of the talks that he did. But really sort of famous story about the Poppy, of course. Cannon Fodder used the Poppy on its title screen and stuff. And it starts off with that famous, "This game is not endorsed by the Royal British Legion" message. And the story behind how that had to be added and all of that. And it's fascinating because essentially the Amiga Power magazine had like an exclusive on this. They had an exclusive preview of it, and they made it their cover story, as you do. And they used the pixelated picture of the Poppy that Stu Cambridge had drawn for the game as their cover. And it appeared in an advert in a newspaper, just saying, this issue of Amiga Power was coming up. And the Daily Star spotted it, and they wrote this big outrage story about it, about how they were disrespecting our war dead, and because the Poppy, of course, is kind of a very famous. I mean, this is all covered in the video, but quite famously used for Remembrance Sunday and stuff, and the Royal British Legion here in the UK, and of course across Europe as well, to raise money for war veterans and stuff like that. And they were saying that they've misappropriated this symbol of theirs that they own a trademark on. And that they were using it to promote this horrible, violent game that was kind of trivializing war. Now, of course, if you've played Cannon Fodder, you'll know that it's interesting in the way that it kind of deals with like the deaths of the soldiers and stuff like that. It's a very, very it's a commentary on kind of the ridiculousness of war, and that's kind of very obvious if you've played it. And the video does, I mean, the video explains all of this a lot better than I could. But yeah, it's 11 minutes, so, it's not even a long one, but it goes into the story in really sort of fine detail and talks about all the background behind it. The crazy rush that they had to make all those last minute changes to change like the design of the poppies and stuff in the game so they didn't get sued, the official apologies that they had to put out, and money that they had to donate to kind of shut the Royal British Legion up and stop them from going full-blown lawsuit on them, which of course would have ruined them at the time. Just a great story. And it was also cool to see the top comment on here, which is from Stu Cambridge, who one of the co-founders of Sensible Software and the actual artist on this game and Sensible Soccer, just saying that he's what a fantastic account of the rather frustrating shenanigans we endured during the last days of development. Just giving his kind of personal endorsement to this version of the story as well. So really good story, a really fascinating insight into kind of the world of 90s game development, and of course cannon fodder, much loved game as well. So how could I not recommend this video? So that's my video of the week. I think that was actually sent to me by Steve's Tech Shed again, but he was getting quite a big ego at me potentially calling this segment Steve's video of the week. So we'll sweep that one under the rug and not talk about it. But that will be linked in the usual places, just like everything else that I cover in these rambles. And go check it out. It's good. And that's pretty much all I have for you this week. So thank you ever so much for joining me once again for this ramble. But there's one more story that I just wanted to give a little shout out to, because this is Atari related and it's something that I'm very much looking forward to having a play with myself. And this has been covered by John Hancock, who is a great Atari YouTuber who you should be watching. He gets all of this stuff sent to him directly from Atari before the rest of us get our hands on it. And so he should do with 130,000 subscribers. But covers all of this in great detail. And this is to do with the latest firmware update to the 2600 Plus console, which finally adds compatibility with Pitfall 2, which is great because loads of people have been waiting to play that game on that console. Also fixes some other games that have been problematic. I'll cover it myself at some point, I think, but he's done this great video on it. But also, perhaps more importantly, talks about the new Atari 7800 hardware that Atari are releasing. Of course, this is coming later this month, and I can't wait to get my hands on this and actually cover it myself. Not to mention just play with it myself. But we've got the CX78 Plus gamepad, which of course is the recreation of that original Atari 7800 gamepad that we got here in Europe. Really faithful recreation by the looks of it, with a few kind of minor quality of life improvements. So that looks really cool. Much along the same lines as the joystick that they did, the CX40 Plus. And he's even shown some of the development notes and things that he's managed to get his hands on from PlayOn, who of course developed this thing. Puts it through its paces and also talks about some of the re-released games. 7,800 games that Atari are re-releasing for this. So there's Food Fight, there's Ninja Golf, and there is, what was the other one? I can't remember. Fatal Run, yes. Not really all that familiar with that game. It's one I definitely need to check out. So yeah, Food Fight, Ninja Golf, and Fatal Run are the three games that they are re-releasing. There's a joystick extension cable. There's the CX78 Plus pad, and there's a new pack with the paddles, the CX30 Plus paddles. Of course, they were packed in with a multi-cart, and now you can buy those separately if you want to, which is great if you want to play games that like Warlords, for example, which is showing here, which support 4 paddles. So really cool moves by Atari. It's all looking very good. And of course, I love the 2600 and very much looking forward to wasting some money on some more stuff for it. So that's all cool. So also you can look out for that. I'll inevitably be covering that stuff on my channel as well. But great video there by John Hancock that I think is well worth checking out if you're interested in the upcoming Atari stuff. That's all I have for you this week. So let's pop back to the big view so you can just have a look at my big head again. Thank you once again for listening, and hope you have a very pleasant weekend. I shall see you the same time next week.